Welcome back to New Rockstars, I'm Erik Voss. In The Mandalorian Chapter 12 just confirmed some critical connections between this series and some of the most controversial mysteries of the film saga. Yes, blue milk can be used to make macaroons, and can become milk once more.
Oh boy.
But ever since the episode came out last week, the clues us nerds have been trying to unpack over these past several days have centered around the question of why these Imperial forces want Baby Yoda's blood, and the timeline of how this all connects to the sequel trilogy events, for which this Mando episode just gave us the big missing link. Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni essentially said, all that confusing backstory with the First Order, Snoke, Palpatine, trust us, we're gonna clear that up with Baby Yoda. I started to explain some of this in our breakdown of the episode, but in this video, I am just going to do a deep dive on this connection, the full implications, the timeline, the bloodline, the hotline to call when your baby ODs on cookies. Let's actually start there with the child. What does the Empire want with the child? Back in Chapter 3 of last season, when Mando went back for the child, he heard this exchange between the client and Dr. Pershing.
Extract the necessary material.
And Mando found Dr. Pershing analyzing Baby Yoda with an Imperial probe droid, which we know comes packing with syringes of all kinds, definitely capable of extracting blood. We also spotted a patch on Dr. Pershing's shoulder with insignia similar to Kamino insignia seen in that cloning facility that also showed up on the scientists in this episode. Now, later on in season 1, we got a sort of confirmation that the child himself must not be a clone, but born naturally and just wanted for future cloning reasons.
I don't think it was engineered. I've worked in the gene farms. This one looks evolved.
And now, according to Dr. Pershing's correspondence with Moff Gideon in the recent episode, that plan is to harvest the child's midichlorian-rich blood and then inject it into new genetically engineered bodies.
I highly doubt we'll find a donor with a higher M count, though. We have exhausted our initial supply of blood, and I was only able to harvest a limited amount without killing him. If these experiments are to continue as requested, we would again require access to the donor.
M count, obviously referring to midichlorian count, that whole idea George Lucas introduced in The Phantom Menace that ties one's force sensitivity to the measure of microbial organisms in one's cells. Anakin Skywalker clocked in at 20,000, higher than Master Yoda himself. So this tells us that the cloner scientists like Dr. Pershing are working for Imperial loyalists like Moff Gideon to harvest blood of force-sensitive beings like Baby Yoda to create new force-sensitive life forms, clones, Frankenstein freak shows, most of which failed to survive, which we saw in those creepy tanks in the Navarro Imperial lab. So what will Baby Yoda's blood be used for? There appears to be a secret plot by the remnants of the Empire to resurrect Emperor Palpatine, and they need force-sensitive blood to be put in a compatible host body, a flesh puppet, so that Palpatine's disembodied spirit can inhabit it and live once more with the ability to use the Force. Actually, the opening scenes of The Rise of Skywalker started to show this. Kylo Ren followed Palpatine's ghost voice to Exegol, where hooded Sith scientists toiled away in a lab with various humanoid clone bodies in tanks, and one of those half-baked clones was revealed to be Palpatine. The Resistance, meanwhile, speculated on how this was possible.
Dark science. Cloning. Secrets only the Sith knew.
And that is as far as J.J. Abrams' script went into it. You can thank the studio for insisting Palpatine return for episode 9.
It's insane. It's actually getting more insane moment to moment.
But not at all planning that out with J.J. Abrams from the beginning of the reboot trilogy. So after Rian Johnson killed off Snoke in The Last Jedi, and since they, I guess, didn't want to make Kylo Ren a villain, which they just should have, they decided to retcon Snoke as a kind of step along the way toward the true evil Palpatine 2.0.
Snoke trained you well.
I killed Snoke. I'll kill you.
I made Snoke. I have been every voice you have ever heard inside your head.
And yes, they included a shot of multiple Snoke clones in tanks. This Mandalorian episode similarly lingers on a shot of what looks to be a similar Snoke form. Same bulbous, splintered skull, same facial features. So we can conclude from this that Snoke was one finally successful test subject from this secret project, which would mean in the near future, some midichlorian donor will likely get drained and maybe die. That fateful donor donor could be the child, or it could be Ahsoka Tano, or hopefully some loser Sith apprentice, because I don't think we want any Force-sensitive character that we like to give up their lives so that we end up with this. But before we continue, thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. Skillshare is an online learning community that offers membership with meaning. With so much to explore, real projects to create, and the support of fellow creatives, Skillshare empowers you to accomplish real growth. Skillshare offers classes designed for real life. You can learn and grow with short classes that fit any schedule. Spontaneous acts of creativity may help break up the routine of a day spent indoors, and learning is a great way to fend off that boredom. They have classes and topics new Rockstars fans will enjoy, like animation, film, video, and music production. A class I want to check out is creative writing, crafting personal essays with impact, taught by best-selling author Roxane Gay. The class focuses on how to find your story, craft your truth, and to write to make a difference. At a time when so many important conversations are happening in our world, your voice is more essential than ever. Explore classes to unlock that creativity for social good. Skillshare is curated specifically for learning. There are no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so that you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you, and it's less than $10 a month with an annual subscription. And the first 1,000 people to use the link in the description will get a free trial of Skillshare premium membership. So jump on this, and thanks again to Skillshare for helping us make this video. Okay, Dr. Pershing also mentioned a mysterious volunteer that he wanted to halt the experiments in order to keep from dying. That VIP volunteer might be Palpatine's son, shown briefly in a flashback in The Rise of Skywalker, who fled. He hid his daughter Rey on Jakku and was shortly after killed by the assassin Ochi. I also pointed out in the breakdown some other test subjects visible in those tanks, one of which the closing credits concept art depicts as matching the silhouette of a Zabrak, maybe setting us up for a resurrection of Maul that was at least being considered after his death shortly before these events in Rebels. Everybody coming back. But what does this tell us about the First Order? That pre-Snoke in the tank hints that this must be connected to the First Order's rise. After all, back in September 2019, Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau themselves suggested in an interview that this series would at some point explain the circumstances by which the First Order came about. So just to catch you up, about a year after the Empire's defeat in the Battle of Endor, the remaining Imperial forces rallied for one last stand at the Battle of Jakku. That was in 5 ABY. That would be 4 years or so before the events of Mandalorian set in 9 ABY. The ruins of that Battle of Jakku is what Rey scavenges decades later in The Force Awakens. After that battle, one Imperial Star Destroyer, the Eclipse, made it out of there. They fled with a bunch of Imperial child soldiers, and from that, the First Order rose. Decades later, they made their first big moves around 28 ABY, which was about 6 years before The Force Awakens, and around that time, they got on everyone's map in a very big way. Now, Snoke came to rule the First Order under mysterious circumstances. No one really knows where that guy came from, until The Rise of Skywalker suggested Snoke was planted there as a puppet by Palpatine, and apparently that was something the First Order never really knew. So now I think we are seeing the Palpatine side of that operation, the operation that created Snoke to install him in the First Order leadership. That would make Moff Gideon working directly underneath Palpatine, as opposed to him being in the mix of the First Order. Gideon's possession of the Darksaber suggests an interest, at least, in the culture of the Jedi and Sith. So he must be currently heading up the secondary Empire operation behind the First Order, one that led to the final order, the secret Sith fleet on Exegol. So just to clarify, we have two post-Imperial factions in the shadows during this era. One, the First Order, run by Snoke, who was a puppet ruler spawned by midichlorian transfusion cloning experiments of the second faction, who conducted those experiments in order to try to resurrect Palpatine. Both of these factions lurk in the blind spots of the New Republic, the concern mentioned by New Republic X-Wing pilot Captain Carson Teva.
There's something going on out here. They don't believe it on the core worlds, but it's true. These aren't isolated incidents. They need to be stopped before it's too late.
Maybe he's worried about the threat of the First Order Starkiller base on Ilum, which might have been that ice planet we saw back in Chapter 10. That's why Teva could have been patrolling that area. Or Palpatine's new Sith fleet being constructed on Exegol, both of which are definite existential threats that, yeah, he should be worried about. If you want to support this channel in our never-ending quest for Star Wars Easter eggs, you can buy shirts like this one at our official merch store, newrockstarsmerch.com. It's filled with fun, nerdy designs, shirts, hoodies, masks. We got everything there. And yeah, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, follow me on Instagram at EA Voss, follow New Rockstars. Thank you for watching. I have spoken.